or something more. My dear students, now we are going to discuss the problem number 2.9. So let us pay attention on the problem number 2.9, which is given uh, on the screen. The threshold frequency mu 0 for a metal is 7.0 into 10 to the power 14 second inverse. Calculate the kinetic energy of an electron emitted when radiation of frequency mu is equal to 1.0 into 10 to the power 15 second inverse hits the metal. The question is simply based on the photoelectric effect. So we should understand the photoelectric effect easily, or we have studied the photoelectric effect. So using those formulas, we can solve this problem. According to the Einstein's equation, kinetic energy is equal to 1 by 2 mv square, that is h into mu minus mu 0. Let us put the value 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule into second, that is your value for h. Your mu is equal to 1.0 into 10 to the power 15 second inverse, and mu 0, which is also known as the threshold frequency, which is equal to 7.0 into 10 to the power 14 second inverse. We take 10 to the power 14 common, and 10 minus 7 will give us 3. So it is 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule multiplied by 3 into 10 to the power 14 second inverse, which ultimately gives us the value of kinetic energy 1.9 into 10 to the power minus 19 joule. Now we shall move to the next question. What are the frequency and wavelength of photon emitted during the transition from n is equal to 5 state to n is equal to 2 state in the hydrogen atom? So here we need to understand this problem. First, let us understand that we are given the frequency and wavelength, that is your epsilon 0 as well as the lambda is given to you, my dear students, of a photon emitted during the transition from n is equal to 5 state to n is equal to 2 state in the hydrogen atom. So now we are going to solve this problem. Since n1 is equal to 5 and n2 is equal to 2, this transition gives rise to the spectral lines in the visible region of the Balmer series. From equation, delta E is equal to minus 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 joule 1 by n1 square minus n2 square. So here n1 is 5 and n2 is 2. So from 5 the electron comes to 2. So the energy is emitted. As the energy is emitted, we have to put the value minus, and the answer is minus 4.58 into 10 to the power minus 19 joule. It is an emission energy. The frequency of the photon taking energy in terms of magnitude is given by epsilon 0 is equal to delta E upon h. The value for delta E we have calculated, and that value is minus 4.58 into 10 to the power minus 19. So ultimately, it leads us to the delta E value is 4.58 into 10 to the power minus 19. The value for h is equal to 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule into second, and ultimately we get the answer 6.91 into 10 to the power 14 hertz. So therefore your lambda is equal to C upon epsilon. C is the velocity of light, that is 3.0 into 10 to the power is meter per second. Mu we have just epsilon 0 we have just calculated, that is 6.91 into 10 to the power 14 hertz. Ultimately we get 434 nanometer, which is the wavelength which is used for the emission of the electron. So calculate the energy associated with the first orbit of He plus. What is the radius of this orbit? You know, He plus is a hydrogen-like species. He plus has only one electron, and we need to also calculate the radius of this orbit. We know that En is equal to minus 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 Z square upon N. Helium has atomic number 2, so Z would be 2, and n is equal to 1 because only one electron is present, so it is present into the first energy level. So for helium, n is equal to 1 and z is equal to 2. Let us put the value. So E1 is equal to minus 2.18 into 10 to the power 18 joule into 2 square divided by 1 square, that is simply minus 8.172 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 18 joule. So the radius of the orbite is given by the equation 2.15, and this radius is equal to, so this is how we can get the energy of the electron present into the first. Now we want to calculate the radius. So the formula to calculate the radius is 0.0529 nanometer into n square upon z. Now to get the value n square upon z, we can easily calculate this value. So if we put n is equal to 1 and z is equal to 2, finally we get 0.0529 into 1 square divided by 2, which simply gives us 0.0264 nanometer. So this is how, my dear students, we can easily understand about the various problems. Now if you could not understand anything, you can ask me, or we can move to the next part of the chapter. So do you have anything to ask? So shall we move to the next one?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
So let us study about the next part. Can you see something on your screen, my dear students? आप लोग को स्क्रीन पे कुछ दिख रहा है?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
क्या
Yes,
दिख रहा है
sir.
बच्चों? बच्चों आपको क्या दिख रहा है? कुछ स्क्रीन घूमता हुआ दिख रहा है, ठीक है ना? हाँ या ना?
Yes, sir.
थोड़ा देर रुक जाइए. ओके बच्चों, चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं. तो यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम्स हमने देख लिए. वी हैव ऑलरेडी स्टडीड अबाउट द लिमिटेशंस ऑफ द बोहर मॉडल. ये भी हमने पढ़ लिया था कि क्या लिमिटेशंस हैं बोहर मॉडल के. और अब हम जा रहे हैं अगले पार्ट के लिए, दैट इज टूवर्ड्स द क्वांटम मैकेनिकल मॉडल ऑफ द एटम. इससे पहले कि बिफोर दैट, इफ आई मूव टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट, let me do one. Okay, my dear students, now let's pay attention to the quantum mechanical model of the atom. I hope the screen is there on your screen. Can you, आप लोग को screen दिख रही है? Please
Yes.
बताइए.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Then Bohr's model is mostly limited to the hydrogen or hydrogen-like species and was not able to answer many questions about the structure and behavior of atom. There was two new developments which were important to understand the next model. First development was the dual behavior of matter. That means matter can behave like a wave and matter can also behave like a particle. And again, the next one is the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So now these two things we are going to study. So first we should study about the dual behavior we should study about the dual behavior of matter. I think I have stopped sharing the screen. I shall share it once again. My goodness. Vaidehi is present. Vaidehi, are you present? Vaidehi, she is looking. Vaidehi, are you present?
Yes.
Very good. Then why don't you give the attendance, my child? Okay. So now we should move to the next one, which is called the dual behavior of matter. Scientist de Broglie suggested that matter should also exhibit dual behavior, that is both particulate behavior and the wave-like properties. It means a photon has a momentum as well as wavelength. Electrons should have momentum as well as wavelength. De Broglie from this analogy gave the following relation between the wavelength and momentum. For a matter particle, lambda wavelength is equal to h upon mv, that is h upon p, where lambda is equal to wavelength of particle, h is Planck's constant, m is equal to mass of particle, v is the velocity of particle, and p is the momentum of particle. De Broglie's prediction was confirmed experimentally when an electron beam underwent the diffraction. What is diffraction? Diffraction is a phenomena which is the characteristic of wave nature. So using the idea, de Broglie relation of dual behavior of matter, especially electron microscope was made. So, you know, before this idea of dual behavior, electron microscope was not possible, but using the idea of Heisenberg's or using the idea of dual behavior, electron microscope could be made. Electron microscope is based on the wave-like behavior of an electron. An ordinary microscope utilizes the wave nature of light, but electron microscope is a powerful tool in the modern scientific research because electron microscope achieves the magnification of about 15 million times. So, a 1 centimeter particle could be enlarged to 15 million centimeter. So, we can see even the microscopic particles or microscopic organisms. According to the de Broglie relationship, every object in the motion has a wave character. So, according to de Broglie, every particle is a wave character. The wavelength associated with ordinary objects are so short their wave property cannot be detected. What does it mean? It tells us that we, being a human being also, we have some wave with us. We also show wave-like nature. But our wavelength is so short that it does not have any significance. So wave-like structure is possible for everybody, every particle present in the universe, but the particle, if it is a very small in size, then its wave-like structure is significant. If the particle is bigger in size, then wave-like structure is not significant for that particular particle. The wavelength associated with ordinary objects is so short that wave property cannot be detected. We cannot detect their wave property. Wavelength lambda is equal to h upon mv, and therefore lambda proportional to 1 upon m. That means wavelength of particle is inversely proportional to mass. More is the mass, shorter would be its wavelength. Ordinary objects have large masses, so their wavelengths are very short and thus their wavelength cannot be detected. Wavelength related to very small particle with very small mass have wavelength that can be detected experimentally when they are in motion. So very small particles like electron, they have very small mass, and that is why their wavelength can be detected their wavelength can be detected practically. Now let us understand why the wavelength of mass which is more is not of any significance. What will be the wavelength of a ball of a mass 0.1 kg moving with the velocity of 10 meter per second? According to de Broglie, h upon mv is equal to lambda. Here m is 0.1 kg, velocity is 10 meter per second, and Planck's constant is given. So we can calculate lambda is equal to, by putting the value of h, then m and v, we can easily find out that the lambda is equal to 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 meter. Ultimately, wavelength of 10 to the power minus 34 meter order. This order of wavelength is so small that it cannot be detected experimentally. This small order cannot be detected experimentally, and that is why there is no significance of having the wave nature for a ball weighing 0.1 kg mass. Same way we can, now we need to understand about the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Werner Heisenberg was a scientist. He stated that it is impossible to determine simultaneously. Simultaneously means at the same time. It is impossible to determine simultaneously the exact position and exact momentum. Momentum is p, and p is equal to m into v, that is exact velocity of an electron. So Heisenberg suggested that for an electron we cannot simultaneously calculate, or we cannot simultaneously determine the exact position as well as exact velocity or exact momentum for the same electron. The uncertainty principle is the consequences of the dual behavior of matter and radiation. If we want to write the mathematically the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, we can write that delta x into delta px is greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi. So actually Heisenberg's principle is we cannot determine the position as well as the momentum of electron, and the position or the uncertainty in the position and momentum is greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi, where delta x is known as the uncertainty in position of particle, whereas delta px is known as the uncertainty in the momentum of the particle. If the velocity of the particle is v and delta vx is the uncertainty in the velocity of particle, m is equal to mass of the particle, then delta px is equal to m into delta vx, because mass is constant here, and therefore delta x multiplied by m delta vx is greater than or equal to 4 pi. Here we have put the value p is equal to mv, so delta px is equal to m delta vx, and therefore delta x into delta vx is greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi m. We have taken the mass from left side to the right side. So if delta x is very small, which means position is determined accurately, there will be large uncertainty in determining the velocity. So if we put the value of delta x very small, then delta v value will be very high, and that is why the momentum of the particle, that is delta vx, would be very large. On the other hand, if the velocity of electron is known precisely, that means delta vx is small, then the position of electron will be uncertain, that means delta x will have the large value. If we carry out some physical measurement on electron's position or velocity, the outcome will always depict a fuzzy or a blur picture. My dear students, this sentence needs to be understood. See, we have just understood, my dear students, that whenever we want to determine the velocity as well as position of the electron, and if you want to take the picture of electron, then the picture will be not very clear always, because we are not able to determine the position as well as the velocity of the electron. So if we carry out some physical measurement on electron position and velocity, the outcome will not always be very clear. It will be blur or unclear, not very clear picture. There will always be some uncertainty in determining the position as well as the velocity of the electron. Now we should understand the same thing with the example. Example to understand the uncertainty principle. Suppose you are asked to measure the thickness of a sheet of paper with a meter stick which has no marks on it. So you have a meter stick which has only 1 meter marked on it, and the centimeter and millimeter are not marked on it, and you are asked to measure the thickness of a paper. Now the thickness of paper is very small, that can be measured maximum into millimeter or even in the less than the millimeter, but you have just marking of 1 meter. So a sheet of paper with the meter stick which has no marks on it means there are no marks of millimeter or centimeter on it. You would never be able to measure the thickness of paper correctly with such meter stick. The same thing